But the cast is announced. The show
Yes.
will air in late September. I wanted to jump on though and talk about the reaction to the cast announcement.
Guys.
Before the cameras even started rolling, the vibe was already different. You could almost feel it in the air, like a shift in temperature nobody wanted to name out loud. Special Forces Season 4 hadn't even confiscated the cast's phones yet, and somehow one person was already standing on an island. While the rest of the group buzzed in each other's Instagram comments, tossing out inside jokes and little winks that hinted at bonds already forming, one account stayed conspicuously quiet. No tags, no emojis, no public can't wait to crush it with you. It wasn't just a fluke, it was a pattern. And for anyone paying attention, insiders whisper. That kind of silence speaks volumes. The contrast hit even harder when you looked at who was getting all the love. Gia Giudice and her mother Teresa didn't just show up, they radiated together. They had that natural shorthand only family can have, the kind where you don't need to finish sentences because the other person is already laughing at the punchline. In an environment designed to strip away creature comforts where every ounce of morale matters, that kind of easy connection can be worth more than any official advantage. It's no wonder that from the moment they arrived, people say eyes were already on them, and not in the, oh, who's that way, but in the, oh, they're going to be dangerous in this competition way. And while most of the cast was leaning into the camaraderie, liking each other's posts and building up the team spirit before they even boarded the plane, one name kept getting left off the hype train. Allegedly, it wasn't for lack of trying. Some people just don't click. But here's the thing. On Special Forces, you don't get to choose your people. The producers make sure you eat, sleep, sweat, and struggle right alongside whoever fate or casting throws at you. That means the dynamics you bring in on day one can either make or break you. And for a certain Sister Wives star, the whispers are that the cracks showed before the first challenge even began.
Things that shooketh me when thinking about Cody on Special Forces, dude was only able to bring 5 things that include a toothbrush, deodorant, and a hairbrush.
Gia would later tease in her own words that there was nobody she didn't get along with, but there were a few folks who could get under your skin. She left the names unsaid, but fans didn't need much to start connecting the dots. Pair that with the way the rest of the group seemed to be circling around each other online, and you start to wonder if the story was already being written before anyone set foot in Morocco. Because here's what seasoned reality TV viewers know, especially those of us who've navigated plenty of group politics in our own lives. First impressions are currency. And when you walk into an arena like Special Forces without a ready-made ally, without someone to read your mood or back you up in the heat of the moment, you're already playing catch-up. But as we're about to see, the uniform levels the playing field, and not everyone is ready for what that feels like. And that's where things started to get really uncomfortable. It was a throwaway line, tucked into an easy laugh on her Casual Chaos podcast, but for those of us tracking the behind-the-scenes currents, it landed like a breadcrumb trail straight into the Special Forces barracks. Gia was glowing as she recapped her time on the show, talking about the grit, the insane challenges, the way everyone pulled together, but then she dropped that one subtle qualifier. She couldn't even name one person she didn't get along with. However, there were definitely people who could get under your skin a little bit. She didn't need to elaborate. She didn't name names. She didn't have to. Because when you've already got an audience buzzing, even the smallest hint feels like confirmation. Insiders whisper that in the tight, stripped-down environment of Special Forces, even the tiniest quirks can start to feel like fingernails on a chalkboard. Maybe it's someone who interrupts too much, or insists their way is the only way. Maybe it's a subtle flex, a look how well I'm doing, under the guise of encouragement. And when those traits are coming from someone with 2 decades of reality TV baggage trailing behind them, the friction can happen faster than a sandstorm on a desert course. The thing is, Gia's careful phrasing wasn't mean, it was calculated. This wasn't some messy Instagram live spilling tea. This was a practiced on-brand nod to drama without stepping over the line. Because while she's building her own career, she's also smart enough to know that keeping a little mystery makes people tune in. And let's be honest, it worked. Within hours of her episode dropping, fan forums were already dissecting every word, screenshotting quotes, and fair or not slotting Cody's name into the got under your skin column. Then you have Teresa, reality TV royalty in her own right, standing shoulder to shoulder with her daughter. The bond between them wasn't just sweet, it was strategic. In a setting where emotional fatigue is as real as the blisters on your feet, having your mom right there to cheer you on, commiserate in whispers, or even roll eyes at the same inside joke can make all the difference.
And we had to go through psychiatric exams where they literally know every horrible thing you've ever done.
And for everyone watching from the sidelines, it was becoming clear. Gia and Teresa weren't just playing the game, they were playing together. Compare that to the alleged lone wolf energy of someone like Cody, who, according to social media patterns, didn't seem to have the same public connection with the rest of the cast before filming. It's not about being liked for the cameras, it's about knowing when to lock into the group pulse. And when you miss that first beat, sometimes you spend the rest of the song trying to catch up. And as the days went on, catching up was about to get even harder, because one castmate was about to speak out about exactly who they didn't click with. The hinting stopped when Briana Chicken Fried decided to just say it. During an Ask Me Anything with her followers, the Barstool podcaster kept it casual. No long rant, no dramatic pause for effect, but the answer landed with the same sting as a slammed door. She and Cody didn't exactly get along. No sugarcoating, no PR gloss, just a simple acknowledgement that whatever chemistry had been brewing among most of the Special Forces cast, she and the Sister Wives patriarch weren't sipping from the same mug. It was the first public statement from a Season 4 contestant that drew a direct, undeniable line between themselves and Cody, and fans latched onto it instantly. In a competition built on teamwork under impossible conditions, any whiff of early friction becomes its own subplot. Because if two people can't get along when they're dry, fed, and still in their regular clothes, how's that going to play out when they're cold, exhausted, and staring up at a 20-foot wall in the Moroccan heat? Sources claim this wasn't some explosive blow-up on day one, it was more of a slow-burn disconnect. Different personalities, different rhythms, maybe even different definitions of what team player looks like. But on a show like Special Forces, those differences don't stay in the background. The format magnifies them. Every time you're paired up for a challenge, every time you're split into smaller squads, every moment you're relying on someone else to have your back, it all becomes a test of how much you trust them. And if trust isn't there from the start, the tension hums under every interaction. Meanwhile, Gia and Teresa were only strengthening their position. Their mutual encouragement during drills was impossible to miss. Insiders whisper. When one lagged, the other pushed harder. When one stumbled, the other helped up without hesitation. That rhythm, the same one that had already made them stand out before filming, was starting to give them an undeniable edge. And whether intentional or not, it also made anyone on the outskirts look even more well out. Briana's candor, coupled with Gia's artful vagueness, created the perfect 1-2 punch for fan speculation. On one side, you had the confirmed "didn't get along" statement. On the other, you had the coy "someone got under your skin" tease. Neither said Cody's name directly, but both left a trail so obvious that online threads didn't even bother disguising it. And because none of this has been officially confirmed by production, the curiosity only deepened. The stage was set, the alliances were starting to take shape, and the cameras were about to strip every one of the little comforts that keep tension at bay. And that's when the Special Forces rules kicked in. 5 items, no phone, no internet, no escape. If there's one thing Special Forces does better than almost any other reality competition, it's removing every single safety net you didn't even know you depended on. Shawn Johnson and her husband Andrew East, one of the other married pairs in the Season 4 lineup, painted the picture perfectly in a behind-the-scenes video. Everyone gets the same uniform, the same basic gear, the same colorless, comfort-free wardrobe. Makeup? Not even a discussion. It's banned. Personal items? You get 5. Toothpaste, deodorant, a hairbrush. Those eat up most of the allowance before you even get to anything sentimental. And if you think you're sneaking in a phone for a little late-night scroll, forget it. No calls, no messages, no internet, no outside contact. Once you're in, you're in.
This is going to be a huge blow to Cody's ego, and that is going to make for fantastic television.
Insiders whisper that the stripping away of individuality isn't just for show, it's psychological warfare in its purest form. The moment you look around and see that you are no longer the most put together, most recognizable, most celebrated person in the room, it starts to chip at whatever armor you walked in with. For those who rely on constant external validation, be it from social media likes, inner circle pep talks, or even just a familiar morning routine, the withdrawal can be brutal. And for someone like Cody, who's been filmed for years in an environment where he controls the narrative, the adjustment had to be jarring. This is where the Gia and Teresa factor started to matter even more. They didn't need a mirror, a phone, or a wardrobe to keep their morale steady. They had each other. And in a place where the days are long, the food is basic, and the challenges are punishing, having that built-in anchor makes all the difference. Witnesses from production allegedly noted how their private jokes and quiet support were like little force fields in the middle of chaos. For Cody, that kind of force field didn't seem to exist. Without a buffer, every interaction, every challenge partner swap was just him and the other person. No built-in ally to smooth over rough edges or to give a reassuring "you've got this" before the whistle blew. That's when personalities start to rub against each other like sand in your boots, small irritations that can turn into big blisters if you're stuck in them long enough. And then there's the hair. Years back, Cody famously detailed a hair care routine that went well beyond 5 allowable items. So when Sean and Andrew explained the rule, fans immediately joked about what he'd have to leave behind. Lighthearted? Sure, but in a game where comfort is currency, even a missing bottle of conditioner can become a quiet symbol of how much you've lost control. But losing your favorite shampoo is one thing. Losing the ability to control the conversation about your past is something else entirely. And that's exactly where the psych evaluations came in. Sean and Andrew's behind-the-scenes stories took a sharper turn when they got to the part about the psych evaluations. Before anyone so much as touched a rope or scaled a wall, Special Forces put every cast member through a full psychological screening, one designed not just to vet safety but to dig deep. According to Sean and Andrew, these weren't surface-level "how are you feeling today" check-ins. The evaluators knew everything: past mistakes, public controversies, private stressors, the full file, and that, they claimed, was exactly the point. The 4 Special Forces instructors want to understand the places where you're vulnerable, not to protect them, but to push on them until you either break or break through. For most contestants, that's intimidating but manageable. For someone with a well-documented history of fractured relationships and public fallout, insiders whisper, it's a minefield. You can't wave away a question with a deflection when the person asking has a dossier in their hands, and hours to wait you out, and you certainly can't scroll past your critics when there's no phone, no outside noise, just you, your thoughts, and an instructor who can read when your voice changes. What makes this even more fascinating is the timing. This season filmed in early summer, and sources claim that most of Cody's family didn't even know he was going on the show until everyone else did. If that's true, then those psych evaluations happened while certain chapters of his life were still very much unresolved. It raises the question, if the instructors poked at family fractures, what did he say? Did he keep it surface level? Did he own any of it? Or did he try to outlast the questions until the whistle blew for the next challenge? Meanwhile, Gia and Teresa's evaluations, whatever they entailed, seemed to be non-events in the public conversation. No whispers of tension, no chatter about conflict. Just 2 people who, by all outward appearances, walked in ready to work and left their baggage at the door. In the edit, that can read as resilience. And when you put resilience next to resistance, audiences tend to decide very quickly which one they're rooting for.
And these 4 Special Forces, they want to find that, they want to exploit it, and they want to make you better because of it.
This is the hidden genius of Special Forces. It's not just about the physical tests, it's about how you handle the moments when the game isn't about the game at all. And for anyone carrying more headlines than happy memories into that camp, those moments can hit harder than any obstacle course. But for Cody, the first major hit might not have come from a drill or a demand from the instructors. It may have come from the realization that the people closest to him weren't in on the plan from the start. When the news broke that Cody was part of the Special Forces Season 4 cast, the surprise wasn't just from fans. Sources claim that most of his own family learned about it at the exact same time as the public, through headlines and announcement posts, not private conversations. If true, that's more than just a scheduling oversight. In families already running low on trust, secrecy can be its own form of rejection. It's one thing to miss a phone call. It's another to learn with the rest of the internet that someone you love is about to vanish into a physically grueling, zero-contact environment for days on end. This wasn't a weekend fishing trip. Special Forces is intentionally intense, designed to cut you off from the outside world and lock you in a rhythm dictated entirely by the instructors. There's no texting home, no evening check-ins, no just thinking of you messages. And while for most contestants that's a challenge, for someone with young kids or kids still reeling from fractured relationships, it can feel like abandonment. Allegedly, some in Cody's orbit were blindsided, not only by the decision itself, but by the timing. This was filmed earlier in the summer, right in the middle of lingering emotional fallout from the family's highly publicized split. From a strategic standpoint, the decision not to inform certain family members could have been about avoiding pre-show drama or about keeping the storyline fresh for television. But from an emotional standpoint, it risked hardening the very walls that Special Forces claims to break down. The show's ethos is about resilience and teamwork, but the people watching from home often measure growth by what happens after the cameras stop rolling. And then there's the optics problem. While Gia and Teresa entered the show with a united front, a visible active bond that reinforced their commitment to each other, Cody's pre-show narrative was the opposite. It wasn't just that he arrived without a partner, it was that the people who could have been cheering him on weren't even aware they were supposed to. For viewers, especially those who've lived through their own family rifts, that sends a message before the first obstacle course even starts. This gap in support matters because Special Forces isn't simply about who finishes the course, it's about who the audience connects to, whose story resonates when the mud is washed off and the lights go down. Gia and Teresa's arc was already shaping up as one of mutual triumph, 2 women leaning on each other through hardship. By contrast, Cody's was shaping up as a solo climb, with the safety ropes cut before he even reached the wall. And if the lack of backup wasn't obvious before, it was about to become crystal clear once the challenges started, and the mother-daughter bond began to steal more and more of the spotlight. From the very first physical test, it was impossible not to notice. Gia and Teresa didn't just work well together, they worked like a single unit. When one started to lag, the other shifted pace without a word. When one struggled with the weight of a pack, the other adjusted her own to keep the momentum. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't staged, it was instinct. And in the Special Forces environment, where every ounce of energy matters, that instinct is gold. Insiders whisper that their bond became a quiet weapon. While other pairings stumbled over miscommunication or ego, Gia and Teresa moved in sync, saving precious seconds and mental strength. They didn't need to prove themselves to each other, that foundation was already there. All they had to do was aim it at the next obstacle. And the more they did, the more the rest of the cast and the cameras noticed. This kind of chemistry is rare on the show. Yes, teammates encourage one another, but there's a depth to family-driven support that can't be replicated by people who just met in a holding tent. It's the difference between someone telling you to keep going because it's their job and someone willing you forward because they'd carry you if they had to. Viewers with decades of life experience know that difference instantly. And when you're watching from home, those little moments, a steadying hand, a quick smile, a shared laugh after a slip, carry more emotional weight than the biggest stunt on the course. For Cody, the optics couldn't have been sharper. Alone in the frame, his successes were his alone, and so were his stumbles. Without a built-in partner, every challenge paired him with someone who might not understand his rhythms, his limits, or his quirks.
You're wearing the same exact thing. You're not allowed makeup. You're not allowed anything that uniquely makes you your own. Like, you're stripped down to like just the bare minimum.
And in a competition where compatibility can make or break your day, that mismatch can start to look less like bad luck and more like a pattern. By mid-filming, rumor has it, the mother-daughter duo's bond had quietly shifted the atmosphere in camp. They didn't need to be loud to dominate. They just needed to keep showing up for each other. And the rest fell into place. For the audience, that kind of authentic connection is magnetic. For fellow cast members, it can be both inspiring and intimidating, especially if you're already feeling like the odd one out. And the longer the days dragged on, the more those emotional divides became impossible to ignore, especially once the uniform, the mud, and the exhaustion started stripping away whatever walls people had left. By the second or third day, the novelty of the Special Forces setup had worn off. The uniform, once a curiosity, was now just another layer trapping sweat. The boots felt heavier, the sand more relentless, and the reality of living without even the smallest personal comforts was starting to take its toll. With everyone looking more or less the same, hair flattened by helmets, faces bare, clothes caked in dirt, the old tricks for standing out or softening your image didn't work anymore. You couldn't hide behind a perfect blowout or a sharp outfit. The only thing you had left was how you carried yourself under pressure. Shawn Johnson's earlier comment that the experience was 10 times harder than it looks wasn't an exaggeration, it was a warning. In these conditions, personality became the real uniform. Who cracked a joke when spirits dipped? Who volunteered for the harder task without hesitation? Who quietly stepped in to help without expecting a pat on the back? Those choices started to matter more than any athletic ability. And in that stripped-down reality, the pecking order wasn't determined by reputation. It was rebuilt in real time. Gia and Teresa thrived here. Without makeup or glam, their energy still drew people in. They encouraged, they hustled, and they treated every challenge like something to tackle together. It wasn't just that they were doing well, it was that they were making the people around them feel stronger. That's the kind of leadership that doesn't require a title. For anyone who's been part of a team, whether on a job site, in a volunteer group, or raising a family, it's a quality you recognize instantly. Cody's experience allegedly was a different story. Without the familiar framing of sister wives or the buffer of controlled filming, there was no narrative armor. Every reaction, every interaction was just there. If he was tired, you saw it. If he was irritated, you heard it. And in an environment where perception can shift in a single moment, that rawness could either win sympathy or reinforce whatever preconceptions people brought into camp. The most interesting part? The absence of hierarchy didn't flatten everyone equally. It elevated some while isolating others. And as the days went on, it became clearer who was building quiet alliances and who was simply counting the hours until they could go home. That's when the tears started. unavoidable, unfiltered, and in one case, teased by the person himself before the season even aired. It wasn't leaked footage or an insider scoop, it was Cody himself who previewed one of the most emotionally charged moments of his Special Forces run. At some point, he said viewers would see him full-on sobbing. No qualifiers, no softening the language, and that choice of words coming from someone who spent years carefully managing his image on Sister Wives was telling, because in the Special Forces environment, tears aren't just about sadness, they're about breaking points. Instructors design these challenges to push every participant past the place where willpower alone can carry them. The exhaustion is physical, yes, but it's also mental. You're sleep deprived, you're aching in muscles you didn't know you had, and you've got a camera in your face capturing every falter. Add in the emotional isolation, no family, no phone, no friendly voice from home, and the smallest trigger can unlock a flood you didn't see coming. For some, that's the moment real growth begins. For others, it's a release valve before they tap out. Insiders whisper that tears on this show can change the entire narrative arc. When they come from a fan favorite, they read as vulnerability, a moment of raw humanity that deepens the audience connection. When they come from someone whose public reputation is already complicated, they can be interpreted in two wildly different ways, as a sign of self-awareness or as proof they were never built for this in the first place. Which box Cody's moment will fall into is anyone's guess until the episode airs. Meanwhile, Gia and Teresa's arc, at least from what's trickled out, seems to have stayed firmly on the upward track. No talk of breakdowns, no whispers of quitting, just steady mutual reinforcement. That doesn't mean they didn't have their hard moments. Special Forces spares no one. But it does mean their public narrative hasn't been colored by any single dramatic emotional collapse. For viewers, especially those who have watched reality TV long enough to read between the lines, that contrast writes itself. If Cody's sobbing moment makes it to air intact, the edit will decide everything. Will it be framed as a breakthrough, showing a man stripped of ego and finally confronting his own limits? Or will it be used as the crescendo in a storyline about struggling to adapt? In the hands of the right editor, it could even be both an emotional high point for drama and a turning point for personal growth. Either way, the clock is ticking toward a premiere that's shaping up to be less about the winner's circle and more about whose story sticks with you after the credits roll. And with only weeks until the first episode drops, the chatter is reaching a fever pitch. By late September, all the speculation will either be confirmed, upended, or spun into something entirely new by the magic or mischief of editing. Special Forces has always thrived on that delicate balance. Give viewers enough raw truth to feel real, then shape it into a story that keeps them talking all week. And Season 4 is sitting on a goldmine of contrasts. On one side, you have Gia and Teresa's tight mother-daughter unity, a bond that's carried them through grueling tasks and allegedly earned them the quiet respect of the camp. On the other, you have Cody's solo journey, framed by whispers of social isolation, a blunt didn't get along from one co-star, and his own preview of full-on sobbing ahead. Producers know that in reality TV, perception is everything. How they decide to frame those moments could determine not just how viewers see these contestants now, but how they remember them years from now. Will Cody's edit lean toward redemption, showing him forging unlikely alliances and pushing through discomfort? Or will it lean into the friction, making his struggles the season's lightning rod? And will Gia and Teresa's story be one of consistent triumph, or will the edit slip in a surprise crack to keep audiences guessing? For fans of Sister Wives, this season of Special Forces offers something we rarely get: Cody in a completely different ecosystem, without the structure or hierarchy he's used to. For fans of The Real Housewives, it's a chance to see Teresa in a setting where table flipping is replaced by tire flipping, and where her daughter might just emerge as the breakout star. And for everyone else, it's a front row seat to the unpredictable chemistry of reality TV's strangest and most stripped-down experiment. The best part is that none of us, outside of those who were there, truly know how these dynamics play out when the cameras are rolling and the pressure is at its peak. That's the hook producers are banking on, and it's why the chatter will only get louder as the premiere date creeps closer. One thing is certain, by the end of episode 1, we'll know which narrative has the momentum, and which one is scrambling to catch up. So, what do you think? Will the edit crown Gia and Teresa as the undeniable duo of the season, or will Cody pull off a storyline twist that surprises even his biggest skeptics? And if you were in that camp, stripped of every comfort, who would you want by your side? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. The next video on your screen is waiting, and trust me, you won't want to miss it.